There have been a lot of developments in the investigation to the origins of COVID-19. What do you think has been most significant in the past 2 years?
Well, I think what's been most significant is to discover that a legitimate scientific debate about the origins of COVID was actually actively suppressed, really around the world.
Sir Richard Dearlove is the former head of the British spy agency MI6. He says stifling of the debate around the origins of COVID was led by Anthony Fauci.
We've now, through FOI, Freedom of Information, got a pretty clear idea of what meetings took place, what happened. They put forward one side of the argument, which they, for reasons I don't fully understand, decided to support, and made absolutely sure that the opposite view was not given any oxygen or media publicity.
Instead of disclosing the scientists' secret suspicions, Anthony Fauci diverted attention away from the lab leak theory.
Dr. Fauci, could you address these suggestions or concerns that this virus was somehow man-made, possibly came out of a laboratory in China? You studied this virus. What are the prospects of that?
There was a study recently that we can make available to you where a group of highly qualified evolutionary virologists looked at the sequences there and the sequences in bats as they evolve, and the mutations that it took to get to the point where it is now is totally consistent with a jump of a species from an animal to a human.
I watched what was happening in the public domain, and I listened to folks like Dr. Anthony Fauci. And what he said was that the mutations of the virus were totally consistent with a jump from animals to humans.
John Ratcliffe was the United States Director of National Intelligence, the head of 18 different agencies.
What I found was that there wasn't any intelligence that supported that, nor was there any scientific data that we could find.
In a world exclusive, an insider reveals private discussions he had with Anthony Fauci, where they deliberately decided to downplay the lab leak theory. Dr. Robert Kadlec was a high-ranking official in the US government's Preparedness and Response Department. He reported directly to the president, and he was also technically Fauci's superior. Here, for the first time, he opens up on camera.
The key is not to let the story die, because there are people who would like it to kind of go away. It's really important to kind of keep people focused on it, and I think there has to be accountability across the board.
What discussions did you have with Anthony Fauci and others behind the scenes about deliberately deciding to turn down the temperature on a lab leak?
Well, it was early on in the event when I did have the conversation with Dr. Collins and Dr. Fauci. It was the intent then to get the White House involved. What we were trying to do was trying to make sure that politically that you would not get into a situation where people would make accusations or allegations, but quite honestly what happened was the exact opposite.
You and Fauci in those discussions just wanted to turn the rhetoric down, is that?
Correct, that was it.
Kadlec says Fauci was worried about protecting his own reputation, and that could be why he diverted attention away from the lab leak.
That would be a natural reaction of him or anybody, particularly, I think for him, to saying, what could this do to me and to our institute as a consequence if we were found to have some culpability or some involvement in this? And I think what probably made that even more acute was the fact that they didn't have good visibility into what they were doing and what they were supporting through the grants, through EcoHealth Alliance that went to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I think that just probably magnified that concern.
It's pretty extraordinary to reveal the conversations that you had with Fauci and Collins. It's pretty extraordinary to publicly say that you did try to downplay the rhetoric around a bioweapon and a lab leak. Are you doing this interview in part because you feel guilty about that?
I just feel like it's an obligation that I have to kind of say what happened. And I think to factually try to portray this, not to get sympathy or forgiveness, but more to saying factually, here's what happened. This is what we tried to do. Did it work? No.